The newest Helldivers 2 stratagem is out. Well, it's been out for like 3 days now. I know I'm late, but I'll get to that. The Emancipator Exosuit comes equipped with 2 dual autocannons, and like me, you probably thought, wow, that sounds awesome. But if you are active in any Helldivers mainstream communities like Discord, Reddit, or YouTube, you probably already think that this thing sucks. People have been calling it garbage all weekend and saying all sorts of things, like the support weapon autocannon is better, the sentry is better, the first mech is better, and that this thing came pre-nerfed. Of course, everyone is allowed to form their own opinion, but the issue I take is with people posting on social media or on YouTube after playing with it for 3 matches then saying it's garbage. I mean, I'm not joking, I watched a few videos just to see what people were saying, and there were a good chunk of bigger content creators showing gameplay where they were just using it entirely wrong, then calling it garbage in the same video. This not only gives viewers an unfair review of the new mech, but it also gives them preconceived notions of what to expect. If people watch a video or read a post that says, "This mech is utter garbage," how can this same player give the mech a fair chance? Most times, they can't. They'll go into their first playthrough looking for things to hate, and when they find one of those things, they'll give up and join the hordes of people calling it garbage. Again, I think people are entitled to their own opinion, and if you've given it a fair shot and don't like it, then that's totally fair, and this exosuit isn't for you. But if you haven't given it a real shot, don't let Redditors or YouTubers dissuade you from going in with an open mind. And that's kinda why I haven't made this video yet. I have been playing with this mech all weekend since it came out, but I wanted to hold off until I got an actual feel for how this bad boy works. You start to understand how it moves, how much durability it has, how to aim it properly, how to melee correctly, how to position yourself, and all of the situations that this mech shines in. All of these things are built up over experience. It's literally not possible to say this mech sucks or it's good after one operation. You need to understand how it works in multiple situations to completely grasp how good it truly is, and I don't think a lot of people have given it that fair chance. And I know my opinion isn't the end-all be-all, I'll never say it is, but I have put in a good 20 or so missions using this thing, and I feel like I have a pretty good understanding for how it works. I don't know everything, I'm still learning of course, but I'm here to tell you right now that in my book, this mech is pretty legit. It's also a ton of fun, and in my opinion, a lot of people in this community have forgotten how to have fun. So many people are caught up with playing the meta and being the best solo Helldiver with 0 deaths that they forget that not everything in this game has to be the next greatest stratagem. Yes, there are better stratagem choices, and there are more effective stratagem choices, and the exosuit is not the best. And that's okay, because it's fun and it has situations that it shines in. Being inside of the Emancipator unlocks moments that make you feel like a raid boss with an extremely powerful toy, and that is a fantasy that this game should fulfill. However, with that being said, that doesn't mean the exosuit is without problems. Of course, I said it's not the best thing in this game, and we'll get to those. My name is Easy, and here are my thoughts on Helldivers 2's Emancipator Exosuit. Alright, so I'll definitely go deeper into what the mech is like individually against both factions and specific enemies, plus some tips and mechanics I've picked up along the way. But firstly, we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of things, basically all of the hidden in-depth stats and crunch numbers that you may want to know before giving it a go in the field. We won't spend too much time on this because while knowing this info is nice for comparison's sake, this stuff is kind of irrelevant when you're actually using the mech in combat. Plus, it's very confusing, but I'll do my best to explain. To start off, let's compare the Emancipator to the autocannon sentry and the autocannon support weapon. The sentry has 300 damage, 300 durable damage, and 5 armor penetration. The autocannon support weapon has 260 damage, 260 durable damage, and 4 armor penetration. And lastly, the Emancipator has 300 damage, 60 durable damage, and 5 armor penetration. Obviously, there's one outlier here, the Emancipator's low durable damage. If you don't know what durable damage is, it is incredibly confusing, but it's essentially a second layer of damage calculation below armor and penetration. Every weapon and enemy have durability stats, and that just plays into the huge calculation of how much damage you'll end up doing. There are also more stats that exist, like AoE damage, AoE AP, and a bunch of other stuff we won't get into because that would just be way too confusing, and again, I don't think that stuff really matters that much. But if you are the number crunching loadout optimizer type of player, I'll link a great little guide in the description that someone else made so you can read more about it if that interests you. Anyway, this on screen is basically why your Emancipator feels like it does way less damage than the sentry and handheld versions of the autocannon. It's because the durable damage is weighing it down. That being said, raw stats like this aren't everything. You also have to account for things like ammo and fire rates. The Emancipator has 150 total shots, so you do have more liberty to spray and pray without having to reload. It also goes without saying that compared to both the sentry and handheld AC, that you have a much higher fire rate, can better reposition yourself without shooting, and are in an armored mech suit that has a strong melee attack and can protect you from a ton of damage. So just because the damage stats say that one single shot from a sentry or autocannon will do more damage, that isn't the full story, and again, I think you should give it a chance without letting these stats or someone on the internet tell you it's not worth your time. If you are considering considering buying it, this thing will cost you 20,000 requisition slips and require you to be level 25. It has a 2-use limit and a 10-minute cooldown between them. Also note that you are seemingly not allowed to take both the Patriot and the Emancipator Exosuit together, but there seems to be a glitch that does allow you to do this. If you select the Emancipator, then the supply backpack, it will allow you to select the Patriot for some reason. Then of course you can remove the supply backpack if you do please. I did do this once and it is pretty fun. If you time things correctly and don't waste too much ammo or get blown up too quickly, you can essentially have a full game where you're in a mech suit, and that's just such a blast. This is also a legitimate strategy on exterminate swarm missions where you can call one suit down, blow all the ammo, and then do it again with no cooldown, and then the mission will basically be over. But we're not here to talk about the double mech playstyle. Not everyone wants to use 2 slots on mechs, and now that you have a little background on this bad boy, how does it actually perform in game? Well, first up, let's talk about the Terminids. A ton of players have claimed that this thing was made for Automatons. Well, we'll talk about those bots later, but don't let this sway you. This thing is an absolute menace against bugs, especially against units like Chargers and below. If you're accurate, you could take down Chargers in just 8 shots to the leg. Bile Spewers and Nursing Spewers get blown up in about 3 to 4, and if you hit Brood Commanders in the head, it's a 2-shot. Then, of course, anything smaller than that is a 1-shot, but better yet, it's a 1-shot with your melee attack. Before we continue, I know what you're thinking. 8 shots for a Charger, that's not good. But it actually is. Yes, 8 shots. I think that's fairly solid. Consider the fact that you are getting these shots out so fast that you can kill Chargers in a good 3 seconds or less, and you have 150 bullets, so you can kill up to 18 Chargers if you're 100% accurate. And do you even kill 18 Chargers in one single game? Probably not. So yeah, I'd say this is fairly solid. Plus, if a bug horde in front of me are only things like Hunters, Warriors, or generally just small units, I'll just walk up, tank their hits, and melee them. Because again, melee does 1-shot. It takes a couple of games to start understanding exactly how to melee correctly because it seems like it's based on the direction that your exosuit is facing. So you'll start learning where you need to position yourself based on where the enemy is, and once you get that down, you'll start squashing everything in your path. Some smaller bugs you can even just walk on top of and they'll instantly die. No melee attack needed. However, with all of that great stuff being said, one of the biggest things that players take issue with is the Emancipator's effectiveness against Bile Titans, or rather lack of effectiveness. This is where the durable damage really makes this thing struggle. I didn't count exactly how many shots it takes to kill a Bile Titan, but taking one down from full HP with the exosuit alone can take upwards of 1/4 or even 1/3 of your total ammo capacity. Obviously, that's not good. You are basically trading 3 to 4 Bile Titan kills per 10 minutes, which is really bad considering things like the Orbital Precision Strike or 500 kg bomb can one-shot a single Titan with a far lower cooldown than 10 minutes. Plus, that's not including things like the Spear, Railgun, Rail Strike, Quasar Eats, or any of the other wide variety of stratagems. Yes, this thing is not great against Bile Titans, and in my opinion, that's fine. First of all, it's not like the devs said this thing was going to be the Bile Titan killer, and people also forget that this is a team game, and Bile Titans are one of the biggest and heaviest threat that exists for the bugs. It should either take some combination of skill, resource investment, or teamwork to bring these guys down. So I'm totally cool with the Emancipator Exosuit struggling against Titans, especially considering that if you play with your team, like you should, and have one of your buddies shoot the Titan in the face with an Eat or Quasar, the Emancipator is perfectly fine with finishing off a damaged Titan. I think this is why a ton of people are struggling to find success with the Emancipator. They are calling it down and walking around solo and expecting they should take down multiple Titans and bug hordes. I did say earlier you do feel like a raid boss with this thing, and I still mean that. You will be the raid boss that all the bugs are targeting, but to find success, you need a teammate or two backing you up. That doesn't make you any less of a raid boss, it just means that you can't do everything alone. You'll still be a tank that wreaks havoc on everything up to and including Chargers. But seriously, if a Titan doesn't spawn, you can basically do an entire bug nest or objective alone. And if one does spawn, just work with your team to take it down quickly so you can get back to doing what your job is, focusing things like Chargers, Brood Commanders, and other medium tier units. Because trust me, it is a total waste of your mech to mag dump into full HP Bile Titans. Another major issue you'll run into while using this thing is less with the actual efficiency of the exosuit itself, but with its aiming systems. First of all, you can't aim downhill, at least not very far. So if you're on high ground and enemies are below, you really just can't shoot them, which is super lame. And I feel like this can't be a design choice, because why? If it was an on-purpose design choice, I ask again, why? On top of this, something just feels off overall when aiming. I don't know if it's just a skill issue on my part, because I definitely did improve my accuracy the more I played, but sometimes I feel like my crosshair is on top of an enemy and this thing just completely whiffs. It does this more at longer ranges, but I expect my autocannon to have range. I mean, after all, the autocannon sentry is fantastic at long range. This is something you will get better at the more you understand how the exosuit functions, but nonetheless, it's still an issue that I think the aiming system should be better, or have just some extra improvements that help make it more clear to players where your bullets will actually go. While we're going over the cons of the Emancipator, the ammo capacity is not generous. I did say earlier that 150 does allow you to have more ability to spray and pray, but that was really in comparison to other autocannons in the game. In a vacuum, this exosuit really could use more ammo, because while you do have the ability to spray and pray, it is definitely not the most effective tactic. You are far better finding a happy medium of spraying and aiming precisely. Somewhere in the middle, where you aren't wasting too much ammo, but you're still able to gun down chargers at fast paces. I'll be honest, there are going to be some games, especially when you're first using this exosuit, that you run out of ammo incredibly fast and end up disappointed. Trust me, just learn how to be a little more conservative with your ammo, and don't be afraid to melee, because it genuinely is a viable tactic to just stomp out all the small stuff. It's also not a problem if you need to hop out for a few seconds and throw a stratagem or two. If there's a massive horde of smaller bugs and you're afraid to melee them, seriously just hop out of your mech and take them down like you normally would. Then get back in and move on with the charger hunting. We should also talk about the tankiness of the Emancipator. I tried looking everywhere and I could not find a definitive number for how much HP this guy has compared to the Patriot, but I do feel significantly more tanky in exosuits these days. I don't know if that's because the Emancipator is just more tanky or if it's due to the exosuit bug fixes from a few patches ago, but either way, you are no longer getting one shot by chargers or Bile Titan spit. However, I would not recommend standing in the entire Bile Titan spit because you will surely lose an arm or worse. But the Bile Titan spit hitting you for a second or two as you move out of it is not nearly as deadly as it used to be. Like I said earlier, there are times where if there are only small enemies on the field, you can literally tank all of them and stomp them to death. It's not only satisfying, but a great way to save ammo, and you have enough tankiness to do it. Lastly, when it comes to bug objectives, this thing is fairly effective in pretty much everything, barring a few exceptions. It's great if you need to destroy terminid eggs, it's always fantastic against bug nests, and obviously can destroy bug holes. It can also easily take down illegal broadcast towers, much like the regular autocannon can, but I do not recommend using this thing against streaker nests or spore spewers. It can damage them and will kill them, but it does take forever. Again, I don't know the exact amount of shots because I have not bothered to count, but if you thought the Bile Titan was a mag dump, spraying into a streaker nest or spore spewer is basically like wasting your entire exosuit. The Emancipator's biggest bright spot is in extermination missions, where if you have all 4 players in a mech with sentries, you can basically almost beat the entire mission without anyone running out of their exosuit's ammo. It's a ton of fun and a very stress-free way to beat a mission that is usually sometimes annoying or stressful. All in all, against Terminids, I think this thing is fantastic. While they are functionally different, I much prefer it to the Patriot exosuit. The autocannons are just far more fun to use than the minigun and missile launcher, plus once you're out of missiles on the Patriot, you are out of luck when it comes to chargers. But the Emancipator just absolutely shreds chargers at all times. To close this faction out, I'll reiterate, your role with the Emancipator is to be a frontliner, tanking aggro, and focusing the medium enemies, like chargers, brood commanders, spewers, stalkers, and hive guards. Ideally, you want your team backing you up as you move forward to give them more space to operate. You will be making sure all medium enemies don't get a chance to live, while your team's job will be to hard focus Bile Titans and do the objective while you protect them. I cannot state it enough, if there are no Titans to bother you, you are essentially an unkillable raid boss that demolishes anything in its path. Another fantastic part is that if you aren't mag dumping on things like Bile Titans or wasting a ton of ammo on small cannon fodder, you will have this thing for a good chunk of time, allowing you to just call it at the start of the game and use it to get as many objectives or bug nests done with your team as possible. The Emancipator is undoubtedly very fun and pretty good as well. I won't say it's the best stratagem in the game against the bugs, because it's clearly not. Like I said earlier, not everything that comes out in this game has to shine in every situation possible. The Emancipator Exosuit is great at taking down pretty much everything that isn't a Bile Titan, and that's cool with me. And if you're here to have fun and work with a team, that will probably be cool with you too. Now, onto the faction that people say this exosuit was made for, the Automatons. Much like it is on the Terminid front, this thing is pretty solid here as well. I don't think it's that much better against Automatons than it is Terminids, but it definitely has a lot more pros here. First of all, there are far fewer units on the Automaton field at once, meaning that you don't actually have to waste ammo trying to spray down a bunch of tiny little guys, and that you're actually consistently taking down high priority targets like Devastators and above. On top of this, when bot drops come, instead of shooting them down normally, you can simply pump a few shots into the holding area, which will let the splash damage kill a lot of them before they even drop down. down. As another added bonus, like I said earlier, this thing feels a lot more tanky than the Patriot used to. Again, I don't know whether it's because of the bug fixes, but I remember when the Patriot first dropped, it was near unusable against Automatons. You pretty much instantly blew up to any explosive damage, but the Emancipator can withstand far more than just a single rocket. Again, I don't know exactly how much HP these things have, but I can tell you that this exosuit really actually feels like an armored vehicle. You can walk out in the open towards an automaton base, and as long as they don't have a cannon watching over, you can usually just tank everything they throw at you and wipe out the entire base yourself. Plus, unlike the Patriot, which utilizes a minigun, the autocannons are incredibly effective against pretty much all automatons and has far more range than a minigun. I don't have exact numbers, I apologize, I didn't bother to count, I was too busy killing, but in my experience, Hulks are a breeze if you aim for the face, and everything below them are pretty much just cannon fodder to the Emancipator. Every type of Devastator, including the shielded Devastators, stand no chance, and you kind of just blow them up with a couple of shots. The biggest challenge you'll find when inside the Emancipator are the big automaton cannon towers, tanks, and of course factory striders. Cannon towers can be a pain because they can one-shot you if they hit a nice shot, and your autocannon bullets aren't very effective unless you can hit the vent on the back. The same goes for some variants of tanks. If it is a tank that shoots explosives, it can probably one-shot you if it hits a nice shot, and of course the same goes for factory striders. While their minigun bullets aren't that effective against the exosuit, their cannon definitely is, and unlike the tower cannon or tank, there is no vent type of weak spot on the factory strider. Your best bet is either spraying at its belly underneath, directly at its face, or trying to blow up the panel on the side. Those are its weak spots, but it's not nearly as weak as other weak spots in the game. Either way, no matter which strategy you take against factory striders, it's going to cost a lot of ammo. However, unlike Biotitans, these things are relatively avoidable. If you see a factory strider, it's typically not going to chase you and aggro on you to the ends of the earth, so you will usually have time to stop and make a plan before engaging. In which case, you can just toss some airstrikes on it, then finish it off with your mech. The same goes for tanks, and typically cannon towers you should be able to spot before you aggro them, and most of the time you can actually just walk under them before they see you, in which case it's a free kill. One big issue that doesn't really happen against the Terminids is if a stray automaton rocket hits your arm one too many times, you will lose a cannon, and along with that, all of the ammo, which really sucks when it happens. But it's not too common if you play smart, and that's kind of what I want to end with here. The reason I think this thing really shines against the automatons is that unlike bugs, facing off with bots requires far more strategy, and when done correctly, you can kind of control the pace of the game, and genuinely, if you play smart, the Emancipator can solo stuff on its own. You no longer need the support of your teammates to complete objectives or automaton encampments. A surprise factory strider drop-in is far less deadly than a Bile Titan spawn, and if one did drop down, you have more than enough time to reposition, hop out of your mech, and make a new plan of attack. And you usually aren't afforded that luxury if a Bile Titan is spawning next to you. If that happens, you need your teammates to help, or you have to mag dump your entire exosuit into it. Back on topic though, seriously, I have walked into many automaton bases inside of the Emancipator, and there is rarely any trouble. The ammo economy is much easier to manage than it is against bugs, as again, there are far less enemies on the map, but this also means you simply just have more uptime. So sometimes you can get through 3, even 4 bases or objectives without having to abandon your mech due to ammo. Believe it or not, I think this thing really does good against gunship factories, where you can easily shoot down any gunship that spawns, and walk your way towards the factory, call down the hell bomb, then call it a day. Same goes for stratagem jammers, which can typically be a big pain if you run into a heavily armored base, but with the Emancipator, the stratagem jammer doesn't affect you at all, so you just walk in, destroy everything, then hop out and turn it off. I really wish there was more to say about the exosuit specifically in regards to the automatons, but there really isn't. Like I said, it excels in soloing bases and objectives, and can only be stopped by an aggroed cannon or a very angry factory strider, which again are far easier to avoid than things like Bile Titans. Much like the Terminids, however, you will greatly benefit from a deep understanding of how the exosuit works. An experienced player will far outshine a non-experienced exosuit user. Understanding how it turns, how it shoots, how it walks, what the enemy weak points are, everything matters here, and the more you use it, the more you're going to learn, and the better you'll be with it. And now that we've talked about both factions, I would just like to address some general weak points and complaints about this thing. As I said, it wasn't perfect. We've already covered some specific enemy types that it struggles with, specifically larger units like Bile Titans and Factory Striders, which I don't think is a complaint from my book, it's just a weak point that I wanted to acknowledge. Like I said, I think it's okay that a single stratagem can't do everything. We've also already covered the fact that it can't shoot downhill and really struggles at far and close ranges due to its wonky aiming system. I think a lot of first-time users would greatly benefit if they fixed this. I have a feeling a lot of people are first-timing this thing, finding that they can't shoot downhill or that their shots aren't hitting their target, and they're getting annoyed and giving up. But first-time users aside, this would just be a fantastic quality of life change in general. I'm not sure exactly what's wrong with it or exactly how to fix it, but I think it struggles with the same problem that the Patriot exosuit does. I remember when the Patriot first dropped, the missiles were very easy to aim and hit, but now they just feel the same way as the autocannons do, except even worse because they're slow-moving missiles. I don't know if they changed the aiming systems when they bug fixed these bad boys, but it seems like they did, and if so, I'd love for that to get fixed or reverted or whatever, because I think it would just significantly make both exosuits not only more fun, but simply better. Another major issue we need to address with the Emancipator is the fact that it has a 10-minute cooldown. This is extremely rough. 10 minutes is literally 25% of a standard mission. Granted, you do call it down and the cooldown immediately begins, so that means it's on cooldown while you're using it, but still, 10 minutes is 10 minutes, and that seems pretty damn long, especially on top of the fact that you only get 2 uses and the ammo capacity is only 150. Combining all 3 of these things together means that you have a stratagem that effectively has much less uptime than anything else in the game. My preferable solution to this would be to simply increase the ammo capacity. I'd much prefer that than getting another charge or lowering the cooldown. I think limiting it to 2 uses is pretty fair, and the cooldown is already okay. Maybe give us 100 shots per cannon for a total of 200. I think even just this 50 bullet increase would go a really long way into making the Emancipator a much more beginner-friendly exosuit, and again, just having more bullets is simply more fun. Now that I think about it, I think this is actually my biggest issue with the mech, because when you're in a suit like this, the power fantasy is that you want to walk around and spray down anything in sight. But with the current ammo capacity, you will find yourself having to be much more conservative than you want to be. Sure, meleeing these small units is fun, but isn't it just so much more fun to shoot a bunch of explosives at a bug breach? Plus, an ammo increase would make it feel a little less bad if you had to fight a Bile Titan without teammates. Because currently, if you run into one without any friends, you basically just watch your mech lose 30% of its ammo just to kill one enemy, and that sucks. The last issue I have with both exosuits, actually. It's the fact that you can't use stratagems while inside. In Helldivers 1, you could use stratagems while on mechs, so in Helldivers 2, it's either a poorly chosen design choice, or they just didn't have the resources to make this a reality. Either way, I hope one day it comes to fruition. An ammo buff or aiming system change aside, I think this could be one of the biggest changes they can make for mechs as a whole. It's not only a quality of life buff, but it genuinely just makes it so much better. Imagine if you didn't need any teammates when running into a Bile Titan because you could just shoot a 500 kg stratagem ball out of your mech. It would also end up saving ammo because instead of spraying down a bug breach, you could call a gas strike or a napalm strike. I honestly think this change would not only make the exosuits more viable, but a ton of underused stratagems in the game as well, because you could form a build around supporting yourself in the exosuit, which would just be super cool. But yeah, that's kind of it from me. Those are my thoughts on the Emancipator exosuit. As a quick recap, I think it's good, not great. It probably lands somewhere around C or B tier in most situations. There is definitely a learning curve to this thing, and once you get that down, I think you'll start to understand that it's not as bad as people say. In the end, I think a lot of people just assumed that because it was equipped with dual autocannons, that it would be a Titan and Strider killing machine. But it ended up serving a different role, which is that it's incredibly efficient at taking down medium tier enemies. I think it serves as a bit of a risky niche playstyle, but if done by a player that knows how to pull it off, it will prove to be a fun and effective stratagem, especially if you can bring along a team that is willing to stick together. Sure, there are better and more resource-efficient stratagems in the game. If you're here to run solo Helldives all day and not play with a team, that's totally fine. But if that's the case, this stratagem is not made for you. Like I said, not every stratagem needs to be the next great thing. There are going to be things that are released that are a little niche or have a playstyle that may not be to your liking. But for me, this thing is good enough to use in any match, against any faction, on any difficulty. And best of all, it's fun, which is what I'm looking for when I boot up a video game. Let me know what you think about the Emancipator exosuit down below, and if you don't agree with my points, that's totally cool, it's just my opinion, so let's keep our conversation civil, and discuss why you do or do not like the exosuit. Again, my name is Easy, and thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it more than you know. Leave a like if you enjoyed, and a sub if you want more Helldivers 2 content. I'll see you in the next one. Peace!